Spoilers. What is a spoiler? A spoiler is when a piece of information in regards to a story is relayed to you at a point without the narrative build-up. It could come in the form of an important plot element. It could come in the form of who became champion on the last pay-per-view. Most harrowingly, it may come in the form of which beloved character isn't going to make it to the end of the story. Spoilers are around us at all times in the ever-online world. Every quick visit to your social media of choice could result in the reveal of last week's events. This subliminally encourages us to stay vigilant, stay connected, and stay up to date on the things we care about. That is, assuming you are someone who cares about spoilers. For as many of us as there are that care about these shocks, surprises, and left turns of a narrative, there are those who do not need those twists to enjoy and experience. While part of me craves the freedom these folks exist with, I know that I personally love my relationship with narrative progression. To me, it is vital. For this reason, spoilers scare me. I avoid them with an intensity some might mock. While I have managed to rationalize it to myself and many others, part of me can't help but reflect, to wonder why it is that people like me recoil at the thought of an experience being spoiled, while others take a bizarre route of apathy or even pleasure from hearing the plot points earlier than they should. I'm the hairiest hare, and this is Ranting Rabbit. Usually these are brief introspections where I slam on the keyboard until I arrive at a simple conclusion. Today, however, I'm gonna ask you to buckle up and let me take my time with this one. For years I have felt passionate about this subject, and I understand that there's a lot of bizarre passion that flings from the other side. I'm not here to tell you what is right and what is wrong. I'm merely here to reconcile with my own thoughts, to once more pop open my skull and dissect just why it is that I live in direct opposition to a plot point's early arrival. Join me as I ask myself the question, why do we fear spoilers? Many moons ago, Warner Brothers released their final trailer for Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. In the theaters, I sat there to watch some other form of video entertainment, but when the symbol of the bat appeared, I couldn't contain my intrigue. Still naive, bright-eyed, and optimistic, I leaned forward. But by the end, I had slumped back in my chair. I was upset. Something about that trailer left me feeling hollow. Sure, the movie would go on to be its own heap of a stinky mess, yet the reason as to why I felt so awful about the trailer alone had little to do with the film's quality. My immeasurable disappointment was because this trailer, a tool typically used to make you interested in seeing a film, had decided to just tell me every single plot beat without exclusion. Not cleverly, not done in an interesting manner, it just flatly showed two twists back to back. I had essentially seen the whole movie and it wasn't even out yet. This was a genuine turning point in my life. I recognize that it's sad to have a big revelation like this tied to a film such as that. Regardless, in my sad little life, everything changed after this moment. I realized that loads of modern trailers work this way. Sometimes they reveal the entire plot, working more like a summary than a tiny taste of what's to come. Other trailers imagine that the best course of action is to use their short runtime as an opportunity to display all of a film's best hits. Show the best scenes, leaving nothing for the future viewer, in hopes of attracting those otherwise uninterested. A trailer's job is to make you want to see a movie so badly that you will take an evening out of your day to visit the theater for an expensive viewing experience. With that criteria in mind, the modern trailer is perhaps not the most effective, more willing to flash its best parts than to leave the audience wanting more. Eventually, I came to the conclusion that these movies are more enjoyable when I don't know what's coming, so I avoided trailers online. I plug my ears in the theaters. If I was already going to see a film, I don't need to see the trailer. I'm already invested, and what I concluded was that I was 100% justified to do this. I have found that I contain more excitement for films. I get to feel the full impact of a movie's message, and I was no longer subconsciously waiting for characters to utter a line I had heard in the trailer, something I can vividly remember doing as a kid, hearing a line, watching a scene in the trailer, and then performing some strange checklist in my mind as the movie went along. Now, I realize the surprise is what I enjoy. The blind approach is what I need in order to fully appreciate a work. And since that fateful day, I've looked sideways at those that can't comprehend my need for a spoiler-free existence. So let's briefly assess the why. Why would someone fear spoilers? The main reason one might give is that the average entertainment consumer simply wishes to be shocked and surprised by the unfolding of a story. And while that's absolutely true, I think that's not really the full presentation of the thought. Nowadays, I find myself pushing games to the side and letting them cool off in terms of popularity before I'll ever touch them. I'll watch films long after folks have quieted down on their excitement for it. If a show took a lengthy break between seasons, I'll occasionally occasionally simulate that break by forcing myself to wait until I can continue. While I don't think the average person would go to the extremes that I do believe that these extremes are just a personal extension of what most of us desire out of entertainment. We seek to experience the desired effect with the original intention intact. In simpler terms, if surprise is what a creator wants us to feel in a moment, we need to ensure that we are not spoiled on said surprise. If a game wishes to hide its psychological horror nature under a cute facade, we need to buy into the facade to make the dramatic twist all the sharper. If a character's death is meant to motivate the protagonist along the upcoming arc, we too must feel the heartbreak of the loss. Regardless of the intention, we, as viewers, players, what have you, should seek to engage with entertainment at eye level and at its own pace. If I don't need to know something yet, it is by design. It is for a reason, so I will learn when and if it's necessary. To do otherwise would be to rearrange the journey. Doing so doesn't change the objective outcome, but it does shift the subjective experience in a way outside of the creator's original control. After all, there is a fundamental difference between knowing something and experiencing something. Let's flip to the other side. A drastic extremist I once met who didn't just feel okay with spoilers. They sought them out to a degree in which I'm incapable of fully comprehending. According to this person, when they would start to ease into a show, they would find themselves inevitably getting attached to the characters. As soon as that attachment began to form, they would whip out their phone and search to make sure that these newfound fictional friends didn't die at some point during the show. While actively watching the series, they would dive headfirst into spoiler territory to ensure they had the right to get attached to this imaginary being of interest. I don't remember if they would stop watching the show upon learning they die, or if they merely looked it up to soften the blow, but either way, I was in disbelief. I still am in disbelief, because if that's what you do, then what's the point of the show at all? It does become somewhat easy to argue in favor of spoilers when you look at it as a hook. Just because you know that Goku will eventually go Super Saiyan doesn't make the build up to that moment any lesser. It's something we all just know by osmosis. For that reason, it almost enhances the fact that it takes quite a while to even get there. You know it's coming, but the when and the why might escape you. If you play Metal Gear Solid, Big Boss is discussed repeatedly. He's the most important factor of this world as he's the big bad guy. So, if you go into the third game knowing that it's a prequel where you take control of that bad guy, the experience isn't changed all that much. You're not playing for the what, you're playing for the why. I have, at select points in my life, dropped a tactical spoiler on some friends. A placed piece of information that doesn't serve to ruin an experience, but encourages the progression further. I have occasionally lied, saying a potential spoiler that isn't true or is only one side of a more complex narrative beat. I find it enjoyable to play these subtle spoiler pranks for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because I'm cruel and enjoy the narrative payoff of a given story so much that I am willing to serve as its pawn. Secondly, because you can watch how spoilers can occasionally serve as a hook, or even the meat on the end of a hook. We, as viewers, are desperately interested in seeing where something may go. These tactical spoilers must be mild, they must be vague. If they reveal too much, an audience member may attempt to elaborate on them in their mind. If they are flat and factual, a viewer may find themselves never allowing their mind to be emotionally invested. If someone told me something like, did you see who returned to AEW last night? This information is potentially just vague enough to have me think, to have me consider, but most importantly, to motivate me to watch. While watching, that mild spoiler will dance in my mind. Every encounter will have me asking, when would be a good time for a surprise return? Every new segment would make me ask myself, who would be the logical person to show up at a time like this? The spoiler can serve as mystery and motivation, so long as it's vague. But when you go beyond that, I don't think they serve much of any purpose, beneficial to no one. Obviously, when I was a kid, I wasn't out here juking spoilers the way I do in my adulthood, but that's also because I didn't really need to. Not in the same way, at least. As a lad, I just watched stuff. They certainly meant a lot to me, and looking back, I'm able to dissect just how profound their impact was. Yet, as a kid, I wasn't thinking on that level. I was just consuming stuff. In that way, I don't think a spoiler could have hurt me then like it does now. In childhood, consuming content that just randomly came on the television felt like a game of catch-up, like the world had existed long before me, and I was attempting to get as much of a bite of it as I could manage. Perhaps if I had continued living that way, I too wouldn't ever mind a spoiler, but I don't live that way. I'm not playing catch-up anymore. I'm in control of when a story begins and ends in my life. Nowadays, with the world at our fingertips and new content releasing at all times of every day, we are left with a wealth of choice. Rather maddeningly, I think this has emphasized the importance of both spoiler lifestyles in my eyes. On the one hand, there's not enough time in the day to consume everything you want to, so I mean, why not read the spark notes of it? On the other hand, now more than ever, we have the ability to enjoy entertainment at a pace of our own dictation, in an exact sequential order. For that reason, many of us want to keep the experience as untainted as possible. Interestingly, I've noticed that modern internet culture is a lot more kind to these unwanted reveals than it once was. Despite constant run-ins with internet spoilers, they're usually treated with a respect that wasn't present in my youth. But if you will allow me, there is a bizarrely common exception to this sentiment that I take extreme issue with every single time. I cannot relay to you the fury I feel when someone says that a 20-year-old game, movie, whatever, is completely justified to spoil, proceeding to treat those spoilers with flippant behavior. The expectation the speaker is approaching the conversation with is that their experience is identical to the experience of those listening. That because this thing is old and embedded in the memories of that generation, it is certainly the case for everyone else. Where my fury comes into play is with the fact that the first time I ever heard the mocking phrase, spoilers for a 20-year-old game, is in regards to a video game that came out 1 year after my birth. Furthermore, it was on a console I never owned. It was the 7th entry of a franchise I had never heard of until its 13th entry. The game, for those curious and unable to calculate, is Final Fantasy VII. The conversation I'm referring to surrounding this game was in regards to how massive the spoiler was. How huge the impact of that spoiler had been on those who had played the game. For plenty, the moment in question was so meaningful that the emotions left in its wake haven't left the thoughts of players to this day. Even if the event exists as just a memory, the shock of it still stirs in the hearts and minds of players. Today, that twist is dropped as if it is just an inevitable part of every conversation surrounding Final Fantasy VII. In their excitement to express how much that spoiler meant to them, a generation of players have robbed the modern member of the gaming community of that experience. Players like me, whose only sin was being born at the wrong time, never got to feel that impact. It's just a talking point that is now treated as a mundane matter of fact. Anyone attempting to get into this game is almost assuredly already aware of this inevitability, and thus, they've been robbed of that opportunity to be moved by a game. All because what? We were too young to have played it before the person speaking? Because a story is older than we are? Because you want to skip to the impact of an event without the build-up to that event? There is a fundamental difference between knowing something and experiencing something. I can know when a character will eventually die. I can know how they will meet their end. But knowing that has no comparison to the experience. The buildup, the dread, the shock, the grief, the pain. Someone who obscures that emotional resonance into a bad thing is perhaps missing the point of why we partake in this stuff at all. Even they, the loose lip-having spoiler lovers, are often attempting to tell you something because they want to express how it made them feel. It doesn't have to be a tragic death that moved them. It could just be that a character did something cool, and this person was in awe of that coolness. Regardless of what the moment or emotion is, it makes them feel a certain way, and by telling you about it, they get to express their human experience with someone else. However, they are attempting to skip a step, ruining the process. In my eyes, the events and emotions that you would want to express surrounding an experience are what make them special. To so flatly lay them out without the proper build-up is to rob them of their purpose. What exactly would be the point of a story if not to experience something? Anything in this world can provide a mindless indulgence. True storytelling is more than that. The twists of a narrative are important because they provide the audience with the proper emotions. The emotions come from a place of care and significance on the part of the creator. Watching something void of this experience is dull and easily detectable. When a story is truly working to its fullest, it's about the emotional resonance from a storyteller to their audience. That's why I watch movies, soak up a TV show, and spend so much of my time falling in love with single-player experiences. To feel something. And in order for that to happen, the transaction of events must conspire in the way they are intended, spoiler-free. That is why I fear them. Not because they are inherently bad, but because they are the reward at the end of a journey. And if I have not earned them, then I shouldn't indulge in these spoilers. At least, that's the way I see it. What do you think? Are spoilers a big deal to you, or are you cool with them? Tell me why and how you keep spoilers from ruining your experience. experience. I'm genuinely curious to hear about the human experience from each and all of us. In the meantime, I'm gonna get back to my soaps.
Roadkill at the moment.
Oh, you're exactly right. Is he going to catapult him? No! He's going to... Oh, holy smokes.
Catch you down the road. Be excellent to each other.